What is up, fight nerds and dirty gamblers? I am Erik, and this is Erik Bets Fights. Welcome to, this will be my full card betting breakdown for UFC Vegas 56, headlined by the heavyweight clash between Alexander Volkov and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. This is going to be another, slightly abbreviated version of the show. Last time I did a short version for kind of formatting purposes. I was testing it out. This time it's just out of necessity because I'm going to a movie with my wife and I have to leave in a little less than an hour. So I got to kind of buzz through this a little bit. So we're going to do a slightly quicker version. Let's go ahead and recap our bets from the Holm versus Vieira card. That was a bummer of a card because I had a lot of eggs in the Holly Holm basket, and she ended up not getting the decision. It was a close fight. Most people seem to feel that she won it. So yeah, it was definitely a bummer that we didn't get that. But let's go through those bets real quick. I had 1 unit on Holly Holm straight up at minus 210. Obviously lost that one. I had 0.7 units on Dusko Todorovic at plus 210. That was kind of a hedge a little bit because I had Chidi in a parlay, and I ended up ended up considering some other angles and thinking that Dusko maybe had a better shot than I thought he did. Plus the line moved a little bit, so I threw a little bit of a hedge in there. But and then I had a total of 3.16 units on Tabitha Ricci. I bet her at minus 117 and minus 116. That was my favorite bet on the card. That's why I went kind of heavy on that one. I thought that was a really great line to get on her. And the way the fight played out, she looked like she should have been a bigger favorite than that. So we had a good read there. I was really happy with that one. Next up, we had a parlay of Holm and Enjo Kwani at plus 125. Obviously, Holm lost, so that one didn't hit. We had a parlay of Joseph Holmes and Jonathan Martinez at plus 126. Had a unit on that. That one hit. I had a little prop sprinkle on Uros Medic to win by TKO in round 1 at plus 700. He wins in round 2, so I didn't quite get that one. Had Holly Holm by decision at minus 135. Lost that one. Another parlay with Holm in it. Jonathan Martinez and Jailton Almeida both hit, and Holm busted that parlay for us. Then we had a parlay of totals. Elise Reed and Sam Hughes to go over 2.5 rounds. Eric Anders and Jun Young Park to go over 2.5 rounds. Those two did hit, so we hit that parlay. I got a little fancy on this one. I put 0.2 units on Jailton Almeida to win by TKO in round 1 at plus 500. I was pretty confident that he'd win in round 1. He was landing the ground and pound for a little while there. Wasn't quite able to get Porter out of there with the ground and pound, so he ended up switching to the choke, so didn't get that one. I also thought Sam Hughes was a really great bet. I got a little too fancy, though, and I bet Sam Hughes by decision at plus 215 instead of just taking her money line, and she ends up finishing the fight with, a minute left, so that was kind of a bad beat, I guess you could say, that I got a little too fancy and took her decision instead of just straight up. And then another one where I got a little too fancy. I took Joseph Holmes by sub in round 2. I put 0.2 units on that at plus 800. He ends up winning by sub in round 1. And then, if you've ever seen my show, Big Money Bets, that I do on Thursday nights, I always have a 6-leg parlay every week on that. And I don't usually bet that parlay, but I decided to do it last time. And it all hit except Holly Holm. So that was a 6-leg parlay of Joseph Holmes, Jonathan Martinez, Jailton Almeida, Jun Young Park, Tabitha Ricci, and Holly Holm. It was plus 803. I had half a unit on that, so we would have picked up over 4 units on that one if Holly Holm would have come through. So this could have, if Holly Holm would have won, this could have been one of the biggest, if not the biggest, betting night I've had since I started tracking. I kind of did the math on it before. I forget what it was. It was going to be somewhere in the range. I would have won, I think, somewhere in the range of 12 units or something like that. It would have been great. But anyway, it ended up being a small loss of minus 2.18 units on the night, which is a bummer, but we're still looking good. Overall, we're at 57.19 units at 17% ROI, and we're at about 15 units on the year, which, we're halfway through the year. It's a bummer. I was definitely hoping to be better than that, but hey, at least we're not in the red, and we're still trudging forward and learning every week, and we're gonna do better. Let's go ahead and jump into the breakdowns for UFC Vegas 56. Like I said, I am going to be going a little bit quicker here because I gotta get her done in about 45 minutes or so here at the most. It's a 14-fight card. It's going to be kicking off with Erin Blanchfield versus JJ Aldrich. Big, very wide betting spread here, betting lines here. We've got Erin Blanchfield, a huge favorite at minus 510. Comeback on JJ Aldrich, plus 405. I think you can argue that line is maybe a little wide, but considering what Blanchfield is able to do with the wrestling, it does kind of make sense. Erin Blanchfield has 90% takedown accuracy so far in her 2 UFC fights, which is awesome. She went 7 for 8 against Miranda Maverick, and she landed all 3. Three attempts, landed all 3 of them against Sarah Alpar. She has that holy trinity of qualities that I talk about that I love betting on in a fighter. She has the ability to wrestle, like the wrestling skills. She has the tenacity and the desire to push the wrestling, and she has the cardio to keep it up for 15 minutes. When a fighter has those 3 qualities, I love betting on them because, sometimes a fighter has the wrestling skill, but they don't look to use it. Sometimes they have the skill and the tenacity, but if they do look to use it, they don't have the cardio to keep it up. You kind of got to have all 3, and I think that she does. Aldrich does have 72% takedown defense. She held Jillian Robertson to only 1 takedown on 6 attempts, but I think, Blanchfield is a totally different animal as far as the wrestling is concerned. She can shoot a blast double. She can grab a single leg and run the pipe. She can find like a judo hip toss. She can, she can tie up with you, look to off balance you and find a trip. I mean, she's able to take an opponent down in a lot of different ways, and she's able to really chain those different takedown attempts together until she finds something that works. So she's really an animal when it comes to the wrestling, and I love to see that. I've got a whole bunch of talking points here, but I got to go a little bit quicker, so I'm not going to go into it too much. I do think Blanchfield will probably have success with her wrestling here, and if she does, I think she's going to be able to win a decision or possibly even find a ground and pound stoppage. We did see her get to a crucifix against Miranda Maverick. She could potentially get to that position here, drop some elbows, get a ref stoppage that way. If she's not able to consistently take Aldrich down and keep her down, things could get dicey. Blanchfield's not a total fish out of water on the feet, but she does look a little bit uncomfortable in the striking sometimes, and I don't think that she's necessarily going to have a lot of success there if the fight does play out on the feet for a long time. In the 3rd round against Miranda Maverick, early in that round, we saw them stay on the feet for a while, and Maverick was definitely getting the better of the striking there, and Aldrich will be able to do the same, I believe. I do like Erin Blanchfield to win here. I haven't bet it. I was potentially looking at, if I remember correctly, you can get Erin Blanchfield by KO/TKO at like plus 650. And like I said, I do think that a decision is probably the most likely outcome, but for her to find a ground and pound stoppage doesn't seem terribly unlikely to me either. As far as betting line, if I was going to bet it, I'd honestly look to bet Aldrich, but I'm not going to be betting it. This is a spot that you could potentially look at live betting because, we're going to know pretty quickly how well Blanchfield's wrestling is going to work against Aldrich. So if things aren't going particularly well for Blanchfield in round 1, we could maybe potentially look at betting Aldrich live. Next up, I've got my notes for this card run 25 pages long. Next up, we've got Andreas Michailidis versus Rinat Fakhretdinov. Hopefully I'm saying that right. There's a pretty wide betting line here too. Fakhretdinov is a pretty big favorite at minus 250. Michailidis at plus 235. I don't know if I'm saying those names correctly, but I honestly feel like this line is a little bit wide. Where am I? Just one second here. We do see Andreas have some decent grappling success early in his fight with Alex Pereira. He's able to lift him up for a takedown. He's able to kind of lean against him on the cage, make him carry his weight. And on the ground, he stays tight to him. He takes the back at one point. He's sticking really tight, not giving him space to work. I like to see that. But then going into round 2, Andreas does look a little bit tired already from doing that heavy grappling in round 1, so that's a little bit concerning. On the feet, Andreas's punches are very, very wild and looping. He kind of just hangs out and waits for his openings, and then he'll spring forward all at once and throw huge combos. Sometimes probably like 6. He's thrown like 6 wild hooks and an overhand or something. He's definitely not one of those guys who's looking to use technical boxing to touch you up. He just kind of waits, and then he comes forward looking to take your head off. So, he doesn't keep it real tight with the boxing there. He gets pretty wild. He's a black belt in BJJ. He started training in both wrestling and kickboxing at about 8 years old, so he's like a lifelong martial artist. He's also not defense-minded on the feet when he's throwing at all. It's just chin in the air, throwing those big punches, so definitely a little bit of a liability there. Overall, though, I don't feel like I have a strong read on him as a fighter. I don't feel like I know how good he is, really. He looks like he's solid everywhere, but he doesn't really seem to have one skill or attribute that really blows you away or stands out. That's kind of my read on him. With the tape I watched on Rinat Fakhretdinov, His most recent fight was against Erik Spicely, who used to fight in the UFC, if you remember him. That fight ends in round 1. Renat comes forward with big punching pressure early. He's obviously not really concerned about anything Spicely's throwing back. Spicely's not a great striker. He's not a guy who has a lot of power. Renat can throw some nice straight punches down the pipe, but he does have a tendency to get a little wild with the hooks, like Michailidis does. Not quite to that level, but he will let loose and kind of get crazy a little bit. The advantages I see for Renat in this fight, I think that he has the advantages in the speed and athleticism, and I think he might be a better offensive wrestler, but maybe not by a huge margin. So really, I rate them pretty closely skill-wise, and that's why I feel like this line might be a little bit wide. Like I said, I think Renat's quicker. I think he's a better athlete. I don't think Michailidis is a particularly good athlete. He's a little bit awkward. I don't think he's particularly quick or strong or coordinated. But so yeah, I think we're looking at a situation with two fighters who have who are fairly similar skill-wise, but one guy's just going to be a little quicker, a little more athletic, a little more dangerous potentially. So that, I think, is why Renat is favored. I do favor him to win, but probably not at, minus 250, minus 260, that kind of thing. But the fight is a stay away for me. I'm not interested in betting anything here. I might have to speed it up a little bit. I went too far on that one, detail-wise. Next up, we've got Jeff Molina versus Zhalgas Zhumagulov. I did bet on Molina here. When we get to the end here, I'll go over the bets like I always do. So Molina has 2 losses. They were in his first and third pro fight. He's been on a 9-fight winning streak since then, including his Dana White Contender Series fight and 2 UFC fights. Zhalgas is 1-3 in the UFC, but I actually think he might be a little bit better than that record would suggest. As far as striking output, Molina lands 8.7 significant strikes per minute and absorbs 6.1, while Zhalgas lands 4.6 and absorbs 5.1. So Molina is getting hit a little bit more than Zhalgas, but he's landing way, way more strikes than Zhalgas per minute. And I think if we look at Molina's fight with Archie Lang, I think that can give us kind of some idea of a blueprint of what this fight might look like. Not that Archie Lang and Zhalgas Zhumagulov are exactly the same fighters, but Archie Lang came forward and used a lot of pressure, a lot of aggressive striking against Molina, and I think that's what we'll see Zhalgas do as well. I think Molina can be made a little bit uncomfortable with pressure, but and I do expect that we'll probably see Zhalgas win the early going. Zhalgas will probably win round 1. He'll be coming forward. He'll Molina will likely be kind of using lateral movements, circling along the outside while Zhalgas is stalking him and looking to throw strikes. But I don't think Molina minds that. I think that's kind of how his fights end up. He's going to make his reads early, and then he will tend to come alive more. Kind of once he's made his reads, kind of found his distance, figured out kind of what Zhalgas is about and where he can find his spots to counter. He'll come alive more and more and start putting out more output. That's kind of the Molina blueprint, I think. And one thing I've really noticed when watching tape on Molina, well, for one thing, I think he's more powerful than he seems. He's not a guy who really sits down and loads up on his punches, or he doesn't appear to anyway. He's kind of just putting them out there, but we've seen him drop people and hurt people, so he does seem to have some natural power going for him. I also think he has great eyes. He stays really aware. He sees everything coming. He strikes me as one of those fighters who he always seems like impressively composed and calm and aware. Like he's a really cerebral fighter who understands what's happening in the ring. He understands, where he is in the octagon. Like he understands, am I close to the cage? Do I need to circle off? All right, where's my, I think he has a great awareness of where he is in space in relation to the octagon, in relation to his opponent. And I think that's something that's hard to teach. I think he just has a really great, just kind of calmness and awareness overall in the octagon, and I love to see that. So yeah, like I said, my overall read on this fight, Zhalgas will probably have success early, but I think Molina will start to take over. I expect we'll probably see Molina by, I don't expect to see a finish. Could we see a late finish here if Molina starts landing a bunch of strikes? Could we see a stoppage, like a standing TKO, something like that? Maybe, but I kind of lean more toward thinking we probably see Molina win rounds 2 and 3 with his striking and take a decision. Next up, we've got Tony Gravely versus Johnny Munoz Jr. Tony Gravely's, he's obviously, he's a solid wrestler, solid takes down, solid top control. He's also been working on his striking. His striking is pretty serviceable. It's not too bad. It's a work in progress, but pretty decent. He's a guy who will doggedly chain takedown attempts together. He'll get on the hips and he'll stay there until he gets you down. And even if you get up, he'll still have that body lock and he'll still keep working for it, which I love to see. But one thing that's a little bit of a concern with Gravely is that, his cardio can flag a little bit, especially if he is, he's using that. So basically he's lacking one of the holy trinity of attributes I was talking about earlier. He's got the wrestling skill, he's got the wrestling tenacity, but when he uses the wrestling tenaciously, his cardio can flag. So that can be a little bit of an issue there. He did get 11 takedowns on 15 attempts in the Simon Oliveira fight. But I think we can partially attribute that to the fact that Oliveira is addicted to grabbing that guillotine. I don't think Oliveira's a guy he's not even necessarily fighting the takedown all the time. The takedown, his opponent is there. He sees the neck. He just goes ahead and lets the takedown happen because he thinks he's going to get that guillotine, and he just tried that over and over and over again. And I do like that Gravely has the wherewithal to go to his wrestling if the striking isn't going well. If he's not getting the better of the striking, if he gets clipped or gets hurt, he has the wherewithal to shoot and go to his wrestling from there. However, Munoz is, a decent wrestler as well. Gravely is the better wrestler here, I think, but Munoz has excellent jiu-jitsu. His striking is okay. If it plays out on the feet, I don't know. I don't have a strong read there. I think Gravely might be the slightly better boxer. If the fight plays out on the ground for long spells, I actually do like Munoz to find a submission here. I'm trying to remember. Did I bet? I think I actually put a little bit of a bet on Munoz by submission. I can't remember for sure. We'll take a look at that at the end here. But that said, I don't feel like I know how this fight is going to play out. That's the thing is like, okay, so is Tony Gravely gonna assume like, okay, I think I'm the better striker here. I don't want to go to the ground with this dangerous submission grappler. I'm going to go ahead and keep it on the feet. We've also seen Munoz be willing to stay on the feet longer than he should, even when that's not going well for him. Is this one of those fights where two guys who are mostly grapplers are going to decide to just let it play out as a sloppy kickboxing match? I don't know. If that's how it plays out, Gravely probably wins. But if they do spend long spells on the ground here, Gravely has been submitted 5 times in his 7 pro losses. And I feel like Munoz is so slick on the ground and transitions so well between positions that, if they're on the ground and scrambling, I feel like at some point Munoz is going to be able to take Gravely's back and find a choke. So, yeah, for me, it largely just comes down to how is the fight going to play out. Are they both going to be actively looking to get it to the ground? Is one of them going to be actively looking to get it to the ground? And if so, is he going to be able to do it? There's a lot of question marks, but if they spend a lot of time on the ground, I like Munoz to find the submission. If they don't, I potentially like Gravely to get a decision. Next up, we've got Benoit Saint-Denis versus Nicholas Stolze. It's hard to talk about Benoit Saint-Denis without talking about his last fight, that beatdown at the hands of Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos. That was one of those where round 2 was, potentially a 10-7. I mean, just a crazy beating. However, it probably wasn't a 10-7 though, because at the end of the round, Benoit actually, for like the last minute or so, he actually started to have some success after getting absolutely beat on for the majority of the round. But see, Benoit has finished all 8 of his pre-UFC opponents, 6 of them by submission. Obviously, he's 1-0 in the UFC after that loss to Dos Santos. Stolze is 0-2 in the UFC with losses to Ramazan Imaev and Jared Gooden. Benoit, obviously, we've seen as a very, very tough dude. He has some skills, but I'm concerned that he might still be a little bit limited skill-wise as a fighter, and I don't mean that as a knock on him, but I do have some concerns about some of his skills, particularly his stand-up at this point. He has nice takedowns, nice top control, wrestling. DC was very complimentary of Benoit's wrestling technique in his one UFC fight so far. But on the feet, he can be a little flat-footed and tentative with his striking, or at least he was against Dos Santos. That could have been the nerves of that first UFC fight. He did start studying judo when he was 5 years old, so he has excellent balance and positional awareness. He's hard to take down, hard to off-balance, that kind of thing. Nick Stolze, he's obviously a good kickboxer. He has kind of a karate stance. He's very quick on the feet, really good movement, really good foot movement. He can be taken down, but he's also pretty good at getting up, especially when he's fresh. On the feet, I do think Nick will have a huge advantage. Benoit has some power in his hands, and he does have some willingness to engage in the striking, but he holds his hands kind of low, and he kind of just lunges in with one big strike. He's not really great at putting together like smooth combos, and he's just not real smooth on the feet in general. It definitely looks like an area where he's still kind of trying to put it together. So, is it possible Stolze finds an early knockout here? I guess so. Benoit is obviously really tough, as we saw, but if Stolze is able to, if we see Stolze get Benoit in a similar position to what we saw Zaleski dos Santos do, like he's up against the cage, landing strikes, even if Benoit doesn't drop, any other ref would have stopped it in that situation. So if we see something like that happen here, we could still see the ref step in and stop it. So even though Benoit Saint-Denis was tough and never went down from those strikes, it was still more than enough for a standing TKO. So, you'll see people say, well, I don't think Benoit's going to get knocked out here because we've seen how tough he is. And that's true, but he could get stopped anyway. So I do lean toward thinking Stolze will have early success on the feet, but Stolze is a guy who will tend to slow down a little bit, I think, as the fight goes on. So kind of the way I see it is I see Stolze probably having success on the feet early, and I see him starting to slow down and Benoit being able to take over with his judo and his wrestling and his grappling. Will he be able to finish him? He might. I could see Benoit winning a decision here or possibly finding a late stoppage. I do lean Benoit to win, but I do think it's a close fight as the line indicates, so I'm currently not interested in betting it. Next up, we've got Joe Solecki versus Alex De Silva. This is a fight that I don't have a super strong read on or a super strong lean on. Solecki is 4-1 in the UFC if you include his Contender Series fight. De Silva is 1-2 in the UFC and hasn't fought since September 2020. This is another one of those spots, kind of like the one I was just talking about, where I expect one fighter to do well early and the other fighter to take over late. De Silva is very, very athletic. He's very quick. He's very, he's one of those guys he's dangerous. He's a fighter that you can definitely describe as athletic, quick, dangerous early, but he will, he doesn't death gas necessarily, but he becomes less dangerous as the fight wears on, I think. Solecki he's a solid, very solid wrestler and grappler, but he's a guy who, when the fight is playing out on the feet, he can kind of be guilty of letting the fight slip away without, putting out any, without putting out more volume or like really trying to do something to sway the judges his way. He can kind of just let the fight slip away from him like that. Silva, like I said, he's very quick and athletic. He likes to strike. He's got nice kicks, good head movement and footwork. He likes to use that stomping side kick to the legs, which some people don't like that technique, but it's kind of fun to see. He's well-rounded. He's dangerous. And like I said, he's going to come out like a bat out of hell and be very dangerous early. He also can kind of tend to stay kind of tight. It could be because he's only had a couple fights in the UFC, and I think, he is a younger guy, but I'd like to see him just kind of loosen up and flow a little more. It seems like he keeps things. That's probably why he slows down and tires out, as he keeps he keeps things really tight, which makes it, not only does it tire you out, but it makes it easier for your opponent to see your strikes coming. It slows your strikes down, makes them easier to see. It makes it easier for your opponent to counter you. So, and Solecki isn't as athletic or dangerous as Silva, but he's able to keep up a more consistent process for 15 minutes. So this is another one of those fights where I think Silva will be dangerous early, but I think he will slow down enough and lose some of the pop on his punches and lose some of his speed so that Solecki is able to just use his consistent process, his consistent grappling to take over and control the fight as it goes on. And kind of the same as what I said the last fight. I like Solecki to probably find a decision here or, potentially a late stoppage if Silva fades a lot. Next up, we've got Damon Jackson versus Daniel Argueta. If you follow me on Twitter, you probably already know that I made the biggest moneyline bet I've ever made in my life on this fight. After I finished the tape on this fight, I pulled up the odds. I saw that Damon Jackson was minus 280 on William Hill. And I thought, man, I think he should be like minus 400, minus 500 in this fight. And when you're getting that big of an edge on the value, I went nuts. I put 10 units on it. It's the biggest bet I've ever made. So I felt comfortable with the bet because I think he should be a much bigger favorite, but I also felt comfortable making it because I was like, if I'm correct about this line move, and if the line is going to move as much as I think it's going to, then I'm going to have an opportunity to arb out for guaranteed profit here anyway. And he's already moved more than I thought. Jackson is already at minus 600 on some books. I just realized I've been forgetting to pull up the I've been forgetting to pull up the betting odds again. I always do that. Well, let's take a look at what it shows on this fight right now. Jackson, the best he can be had for is minus 500, but he's also minus 550, minus 600 in different places. Argueta can be had for plus 425. So my point being, anyway, that when I bet him at minus 280, I figured, so right now Argueta's at plus 425. I have the option to arb out for a guaranteed profit. I'm not going to do it though because, or so far I haven't. I can get a little bit of guaranteed profit, or I can pick up like 3.5 units of not guaranteed, but very likely profit. I mean, considering I got him at minus 280 and he's now at minus 600, that's crazy value. And it feels like, as much as it would be nice to lock in guaranteed profit, it feels like I should just ride this one out because I feel like Jackson is going to be able to win here. To break down their skill sets a little bit, Damon Jackson's striking is awkward but serviceable. I mean, if nothing else, he's able to use it to close the distance and get his, where he can clinch and grapple and really get his game going. He has somewhere in the neighborhood of 16 submission victories in his pro career. So he's a guy that he is dangerous on the ground. Not one of those guys where, oh my God, if you end up on the ground with him, you're done for. But I mean, he does finish a lot of people that way. So he's definitely dangerous there. He's also a solid wrestler, maybe not an amazing wrestler, but he's got solid wrestling skills. He's got really good, tight, heavy top control on the ground if he's able to get on top of you. And he's really been putting together some great performances lately. He's one of those fighters that he's on his second stint in the UFC now. I think a lot of people didn't think super highly of him at first, when he first came into the UFC, and even maybe in the second stint a little bit. But I think he's one of those guys that we're really seeing him put it together, and we're really seeing performances from him that are better than a lot of people expected to see. And I think we're seeing Damon Jackson in his prime really putting together his best possible performances right now. And so if we look at the fact that Daniel Argueta, he's coming in on late notice. He's coming up a weight class. He's at a 3-inch disadvantage for both height and reach, I believe, here. Coming up a weight class. He took the fight on short notice. He did just have a fight like 3 weeks ago in LFA, I think. So if you look at the fact that, he's an undersized guy, coming up a weight class, making his UFC debut on late notice against a guy who is like firing on all cylinders right now, it's a tough spot. And then if we take into account the actual, Argueta's actual skill set, the strongest part of his game is his wrestling. His striking really doesn't look great to me. He doesn't look super comfortable there. He doesn't, he's a little wild and loose. He's pretty lacking in the process and technique with his striking, I think. He's not afraid to strike in the pocket. Like, he's not afraid to get in there and mix it up. But when he's doing that, he's holding his hands really low and he's very hittable. He's just kind of loose and open while he's striking, and he is very hittable. Not that I think Damon Jackson's going to knock him out, but that's just something to be aware of with Argueta in this fight and going forward. So, I think Argueta's path to victory here, if he has one, is in the wrestling. I think he may get takedowns on Jackson, but even if he does, I like Jackson to be able to stay safe, to use his hips, to use his guard, to use his scrambling, just his ability on the ground in general. If we use the Mirsad Bektic fight, when Damon Jackson fought Mirsad Bektic, if we use that as sort of a blueprint of how this could play out, Bektic was able to take Damon Jackson down numerous times, but some of the time Jackson was able to get up very quickly. And the times that he wasn't able to get up very quickly, he was able to keep himself pretty safe. He was able to grab a Kimura. I think he grabbed a Kimura at least 2 different times in that fight, and was able to use it to at least keep Bektic kind of off balanced. To be, with a Kimura, you can threaten for the submission, but you can also use it to reverse your opponent and that sort of thing. And we did see him do that as well. So, even if Argueta is able to have some success with his wrestling early, I think Jackson's going to be able to get up, or if he's not, he's going to be able to keep himself safe. And I think Jackson's just going to be able to take over down the stretch. And even if Argueta is potentially the better wrestler as far as takedowns and, top control pressure, I think Jackson is going to be the better grappler overall as far as the positional grappling and submissions and that sort of thing. I think he's has the better jiu-jitsu, even if Argueta potentially has the better wrestling, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And Argueta is one of those guys he's also kind of a ball of energy who stays kind of tight and doesn't always remember to pace himself. And especially with this being his UFC debut, he could fade down the stretch. Basically what I'm saying, if you didn't figure this out from my 10-unit bomb that I took on Damon Jackson, is I think this is a good spot for him. And I do think that he will win this fight, probably by submission. He'll probably find a submission, I think. What time we got? All right, we're doing okay, but I'm going to have to hurry it up a little more. Oh, good. This one's perfect because I don't have much to say about it. Felice Herrig versus Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I don't have a strong read on this fight, and I just don't have a lot of interest in this fight, to be honest with you, so I'm going to keep this pretty short. One interesting point, Karolina Kowalkiewicz is currently on a 5-fight losing streak in the UFC. If she loses this fight, she will be the first women's fighter in UFC history to have a 6-fight losing streak in the promotion. I even put in my notes here, I have very little interest in this fight, and I thought neither of these women were still in the UFC. Yeah, especially Felice Herrig. I had no idea she was even still with the promotion until I saw this fight announced. I think Kowalkiewicz is probably the more technical striker with the straighter punches, the better technique, but Herrig lands with more power. Herrig's game plan will probably be to grapple here, but in their first fight, they fought back in like maybe 2018 or so. She didn't have much luck with the grappling in their first fight. Like Kowalkiewicz was getting the better of the striking, but she was also getting the better of the wrestling and the grappling at times, which I think was kind of unexpected. But yeah, I don't have a strong read on how this fight's going to play out. If I was going to bet it, I just realized I forgot to pull up the betting lines again. Where is it? Very close, but Herrig is a small favorite at -115. Kowalkiewicz, small underdog at +108. Obviously, their first fight was a few years ago, but Kowalkiewicz won the first fight. Not that this fight's going to go exactly the same, but if I was going to bet it, I would take the plus money on the underdog here because it's a close fight. But yeah, that's enough about that one. I don't have much else to say about that. Alonzo Menifield versus Askar Mozharov. This is another one where my breakdown is pretty simple. If you've watched tape on Askar Mozharov, interesting thing with Askar Mozharov, today, I don't know what happened. I want to look into this more. His record on Tapology changed today. He was like 25-3 or something, and now he's 21-11. Something happened where information came to light about his fights. I don't know what it is. It sounds like some pretty shady stuff though. But anyway, if you watch tape on him, he's one of those guys who's an absolute madman. He hits very hard. He looks to come out aggressively and finish the fight early, and he has finished many, many, many opponents in the first round. However, how many times in the past have we seen a fighter who is a very physical, aggressive madman who's able to do that? They're able to just spark all these low-level opponents out of there early, but then they step up to the big show, and the first time they face a high-quality opponent, the first time they face the adversity that a high-quality opponent is capable of showing them, they just fold and they can't handle it. How many times have we seen that happen? And I think we absolutely could see that happen again here. I especially think, like, if we use Alonzo Menifield's fight with Fabio Charant as a blueprint here, if Alonzo Menifield just comes out exactly like he did in the Fabio Charant fight, I think he's going to have Mozharov out of there in under 2 minutes. If he decides to, stay at range and kickbox with Mozharov, Mozharov, he hits very hard. He's got very strong kicks, very strong punches. Yeah, if you stay at distance and kickbox with the guy, even if you're a better, technical fighter than he is, he's the kind of guy who might catch you and get you out of there. I'm hoping Menifield is going to be smart enough not to do that. I think if Menifield just runs across the ring, strikes his way into close distance, wraps up Askar Mozharov's hips, and takes him down, he's going to be able to get him out of there with ground and pound in a minute or two. I'm oversimplifying here, but that's my take on that fight. And betting wise, I haven't bet this fight yet, but I'm probably going to. Where is it? Menifield is only a -159 favorite. Mozharov +145. I think the reason that the line isn't wider is just because we don't know if we can trust Menifield to grapple here. If Menifield does decide to just, I'm going to just throw haymakers with this guy, sure. Maybe Mozharov could find a win there, but I think if Menifield just looks to use the grappling here, I think he's going to have a huge upper hand there, and he's going to be able to make it happen pretty quickly. Next up, Ode Osbourne versus Zaruk Adashev. Hey, I'm actually going to remember to give you the betting odds for once, but now I can't find them. There it is. Ode Osbourne, decent-sized favorite at -172. Comeback on Zaruk Adashev +160. This is a fight where I know a lot of people are really confident in Ode Osbourne. I've seen a lot of bets on him. I don't necessarily feel that way. I'm going to give you some stats here. Ode lands 4.7 significant strikes per minute and absorbs 4.9, while Adashev lands 3.5 and absorbs 2.9. So Ode is landing a lot more strikes, but he's also getting hit a lot more. Adashev has 100% takedown defense, but that's kind of misleading because he's only had one takedown attempted against him in the UFC, and that was against Ryan Benoit. Ode shows 66% takedown defense, but that's also on only a handful of attempts. I do think, Ode is the better wrestler here. And, both guys, potentially have a little bit of wrestling in their back pockets. Ode is the better wrestler. I'm not necessarily expecting that wrestling is going to play a role here, but, we may see Ode decide to use his wrestling, especially if things aren't going as well as he had hoped with the striking. Ode Osbourne is obviously very quick and athletic. He's got really sharp hands. He does hold his chin high and his hands low, which I don't love to see. Somebody could catch him, but, he's going to be at a pretty significant I don't remember what the height and reach advantage is right now, and I don't have that in front of me, but he's quite a bit bigger. Zaruk is a pretty small guy for the weight class. Like I mentioned, Ode was a college wrestler, so he can lean on those skills if he wants to. He's a guy who doesn't load up on his strikes. He kind of just puts his strikes out there looking to make contact, kind of like that Diaz brothers style. Ode does slow down later in fights, so that's one thing to watch for. As for Zaruk Adashev, he's a good striker, but he's somewhat flat-footed, doesn't use a lot of movement, one of those guys. When he does throw, he has fast, powerful punches, nice hard leg kicks. He'll often kind of circle on the outside and look to counter. And speaking of those leg kicks, if you haven't watched the Ryan Benoit fight, go watch that fight. He absolutely destroyed Ryan Benoit's legs with leg kicks. I mean, I think he'd only landed like 3 of them or something before Benoit was very visibly limping and hurt already. He was really chewing him up with those. However, another thing I wanted to say about Adashev, he has a pretty, not that this is necessarily a bad thing because some people are able to really make this work for them, but he has a pretty, bread and butter kind of striking game. It's pretty much leg kicks, a jab, a 1-2, occasionally a hook. He keeps it simple. He doesn't really get fancy, but he makes it work for him. As far as the leg kicks, though, Ode being a southpaw should serve him well here. Adashev will switch stances sometimes, but he's likely not going to be as powerful or effective with the low kicks, with the leg kicks when he switches to southpaw. But yeah, Ode being a southpaw here obviously makes it more difficult for Adashev to be able to eat him up with those nasty leg kicks, so that'll help here. Overall, I don't feel like I don't have a strong lean in this fight. I guess I lean Ode Osbourne, based on him having the size and the reach here and also having the wrestling in his back pocket. But I do think that this fight could play out more closely than the odds suggest, and I'm personally gonna stay away from it. Next up, we got 4 fights left. I gotta hurry up. Poliana Botelho versus Carini. I'm not sure how you say it. Poliana Botelho versus Carini Silva. Very, very close fight here. Carini Silva -110, Poliana Botelho +100. There's another one where I don't have like a super strong lean necessarily. Botelho can be out-wrestled and out-grappled, especially if you get her on her back. That seems to be kind of a blueprint for beating her. We've seen that happen. That said, I don't know that Silva has, she definitely has some offensive wrestling. I don't know how great her offensive wrestling is. I don't know that she's necessarily going to be able to consistently take Botelho down and keep her down. Silva likes to throw a lot of kicks on the feet, including that front kick to the gut, which is one of my favorite. We've been seeing a lot of people use that lately. Just that front teep kick where you just blast it right into the gut. I love that, and she uses that well. On her back, Carini Silva is a lot of fun to watch. She's very active with her guard, very flexible. She likes to use that 10th planet mission control where she's pulling her leg way up and holding it, She'll even look for omoplatas and gogoplatas from that position, which I love to see. She can look pretty sharp and technical on the feet early, but her punches do get kind of slow and loopy as she starts to slow down, in round 2, round 3. She will look to push her opponent against the cage and try to use trip takedowns, which might be effective against Botelho. She might be able to be effective there. I don't have much more to say about this fight because I really just don't have a strong read on it. I did sprinkle Carini Silva by sub. I think I got it at +550, simply because I do think if Botelho is able to take Carini Silva down and hold her on her back for long periods of time, Silva will be really active with her guard, and she does have the flexibility to really be able to do, or at least attempt, really interesting things from that position. And she may be able to, catch Botelho off guard, catch her with something she's not expecting. But overall, I don't really have a strong read on this fight, which, neither do the odds makers or the general public, it seems, because it's literally a coin flip on the odds pretty much. So, and I agree with that, I think so. Next up, we've got Mike Trizano versus Lucas Almeida. The betting odds on this one, Trizano favored at minus 210. He's even up as high as minus 250, minus 260 in spots. Lucas Almeida can be had for plus 200. I do probably favor Trizano to win here, but I think that line is a little bit wide. If I was going to bet this, I would probably look to bet Almeida. The fight's at 145. Almeida usually fights at 155. Trizano is 5-2 in the UFC if you include his tough fights. He does have some subs and KOs early in his career, but all of his UFC level wins are by decision. So the finishes he was getting were against lower level competition. Trizano lands 3.5 significant strikes per minute and absorbs 3.9, while Almeida lands 6.4 and absorbs 7.6. So, but that's only for Almeida. That's only one fight sample size there from his Contender Series fight. But that 3.5 significant strikes landed per minute is really my big concern with Mike Trizano, is that he just doesn't put out enough volume. He's one of those guys who will, in the Hakeem Dawodu fight, he was getting outstruck, he was getting out-volumed. I mean, Dawodu was attempting and landing almost twice as many strikes as Trizano, and Trizano just never looked to push it. And that's one of my, kind of like how I say that holy wrestling trinity, it is my, one of my favorite things to bet on in a fighter. One of the things, the traits that makes me not want to bet on a fighter is somebody who just lets a fight slip away from them without looking to crank it up or get some urgency to win the fight. And Trizano is a guy who will do that. What I put in my notes here, Trizano is a pretty good striker, but he just doesn't do enough for me. He doesn't put out a lot of volume, and he never really shows any urgency to make something happen in a fight. He puts his jab out there, he puts his leg kicks out there. He'll accept a slow pace, and he won't look to push it, even if he's losing, like I said. He did crank it up a little bit in round 3 against Hakeem Dawodu, but it was like too little too late kind of thing, And Trizano can also, partially because of that pace that he sets and also because he doesn't have a lot of power, he can struggle to put that respect or fear in his opponent that keeps them from confidently asserting their game plan. You'll hear the commentators say that a lot, like, oh, he needs to land something. He needs to get that confidence back. And I think that's an issue for Trizano, is his opponents don't tend to feel anything from him that backs them off or keeps them from feeling like they can continue to come forward and do what they're trying to do. Almeida, on the other hand, he likes to pressure. He has fast, accurate hands. He throws a nice, crisp 1-2 down the middle. In his 13 pro wins, Almeida has 7 round 1 finishes and 2 round 2 finishes. So he's a guy who he likes to look for that early finish. This is the kind of fight where I could see it coming down to round 2, because I think Almeida will win round 1, because Almeida will come out hard. He'll be out-voluming Trizano for sure and probably landing more strikes. And, if it goes to round 3, we'll probably see Trizano win round 3, because I think Almeida will probably have slowed down. And like I said, we have seen Trizano crank it up a little bit in round 3 and look to win that. So this could be one of those that's like Almeida wins round 1, Trizano wins round 3. How tired is Almeida in round 2? That kind of thing. So it could come down to who wins round 2. But, I'm gonna lean toward Trizano by decision here, but as far as the betting value, I think it's on Almeida. And maybe you'd even look at, Trizano's pretty tough. I don't know, but maybe you'd even look at Almeida by KO or Almeida by KO round 1. Like I said, he's finished a bunch of people in round 1, but I think the betting value is on Almeida here. Next up, we've got Dan Ige versus Movsar Evloev. Movsar is 15-0 overall, 5-0 in the UFC. He lands 4.3 significant strikes per minute and absorbs 2.7, while Ige lands 3.9 and absorbs 3.4. Movsar took Hakeem Dawodu down 9 times on 13 attempts in his last fight, which is awesome. Ige is 15-5 overall, 8-4 in the UFC. That's if you count his Contender Series fight. He's never been finished in 20 pro fights. Obviously, Evloev, we know his style. He's a smothering grappler who gets you down, stays on you, gives you no room to work or breathe. He'll shoot as many takedowns as he needs to keep taking you down again. He'll just stick with that game plan. He has great top control. He's great at taking the back. If his opponent is rolling and scrambling, he's great at floating on top, floating between transitions easily and effortlessly. He does tend to slow down in his fights a little bit. We haven't really seen him death gasp, but he'll slow down a little bit, but it's not, from what I've seen so far anyway, it's not to a level that's super concerning to me, I guess. Ige is a solid wrestler and grappler himself, and he has good striking and reasonably heavy hands. I I think maybe you can argue that the line is a little bit wide here. I can't even remember if I pulled it out. I didn't. Evloev is at -400 with Ige at +325. So the line is very wide. But it's kind of like with the Blanchfield Aldrich fight, like I was talking about earlier. Like what you see those wide lines on a fighter who is just a solid smothering grappler like that. If there's a decent shot that the opponent is not going to have an answer for that grappling. And like I said, Ige's a solid wrestler himself, but not to the level of Evloev. I don't think he's going to be able to consistently stop Evloev's takedowns. One thing that I will say for Ige, like I said, Evloev does slow down. If we were to see Evloev slow down a lot in this fight, and Ige does have heavy hands. He's not necessarily like a big time KO artist. He's not like knocking everybody out, but he's gotten some KO finishes in his day. One prop that I kind of liked in this fight, I don't have the odds in front of me, but I think I remember, Dan Ige by KO in round 3 is at like plus 2,800. So if Ige does get a win here, it's probably a KO finish, and it could come late in the fight if Evloev is, it could be an actual standing KO. Ige maybe catches Evloev with something and then finishes up with ground and pound. But let's say even like they're late in the fight, Evloev has been wrestling, he's been getting the takedowns, but he's been having to work hard for them. Ige has been getting back up. Evloev is having to work to take him back down again, because that's what really tires somebody out and slows them down, right? So if we see that for the first 2 rounds and then we're getting into round 3, we could even see Evloev shoot a takedown that's too slow and too sloppy, and Ige ends up on top and is able to land some ground and pound, something like that. So I do like Evloev to win here, probably by decision. I actually did bet Evloev by decision, but Ige's not. I don't think Ige's dead in the water here, especially if Evloev slows down a lot. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily bet that Evloev money line. You can maybe parlay it, but I got a pretty good line on his decision. I can't remember what it was exactly, but we'll take a look at it in a minute. I think it might have been -140 or something. I can't remember. You never love betting a prop that has a minus sign in front of it, but in this case, I think Evloev by decision is a pretty likely outcome. Anyway, and finally, the heavyweight main event between Alexander Volkov and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I'm actually not going to say a ton about this one either. I want to share some stats with you, and then as far as my breakdown, it's going to be pretty simple. Volkov is 8-4 in the UFC, with 4 of those wins coming by strikes and 1 KO loss. That was the very late KO to Derek Lewis in a fight that he was winning. 1 submission loss, which was to Tom Aspinall his last time out. Jairzinho is 6-3 in the UFC, with all 6 wins coming by way of strikes and 2 losses by decision, and 1 loss being that 22nd KO loss to Francis Ngannou. Volkov lands 4.8 significant strikes per minute and absorbs 3.0, while Jairzinho lands 2.8 and absorbs 3.0. So neither of them are putting out a ton of volume, but Jair is extremely low volume. That's really my biggest concern about him, is he's one of those guys who's pretty much reliant on the knockout to win a fight. He just doesn't put out enough volume. 2.8 significant strikes landed per minute. I mean, he's getting like doubled up by volume by almost anyone he's fighting. Not that we can't, we look at a fight like Chito Vera versus Rob Font, we've definitely seen situations where the person who's landing fewer strikes but harder strikes can win a decision. We definitely see that, but still, it's it's difficult with that kind of volume to win a decision. Volkov averages only half a takedown per 15 minutes, but he does have 70% takedown accuracy. Like, is he going to look to wrestle here? I don't know, but that's an option, I think. Jair does have 75% takedown defense, but these numbers largely come from the Overeem and Gane fights. Overeem went 2 for 10 on takedown attempts. Gane went 2 for 14 on takedown attempts, respectively. Anyway, so my basic breakdown for this fight is pretty simple. Volkov is the more consistent process-based fighter, and Jairzinho is basically dependent on a KO to win, I think. It's 25 minutes. So 2 things to be concerned about here. We've seen Jairzinho get that KO in round 5, right? The Alistair Overeem fight, that was he finished him. It wasn't only just a couple seconds left in the fight, so we know that Jairzinho carries that power all the way to the end. And then on the other side of that, we've seen Alexander Volkov win the entire fight. And then when he got KO'd by Derek Lewis, that was another situation where there was, maybe 10 seconds left in the fight or something? I can't remember for sure, but there wasn't a whole lot left. He'd been winning the entire fight, and then he gets caught and finished. So could that happen? Certainly, like Jairzinho is going to be dangerous for the entire 25 minutes. That said, Volkov is the better technical striker. Volkov is just so very good at doing what he does. He knows how to use his length. He's a huge guy. He knows how to use his length. He knows how to kind of just keep things buttoned up, keep things consistent. He just has a very just kind of calm, collected, consistent style. He's going to keep doing what works. He's going to keep putting it out there. He's going to touch you up. So I lean toward thinking, I forgot to pull up the odds yet again. Alexander Volkov, minus 138. He's up more at like minus 150, minus 160 most places, but he's minus 138 on Betway. Jairzinho Rozenstruik, come back on him as plus 142. I think if you're going to bet Rozenstruik, if you like Rozenstruik here, I think you got to bet him by KO or inside the distance. I think it's very unlikely that he wins a decision here. As far as a pick, I do like Volkov to win here, probably by decision. Could he potentially, find a late finish? Maybe. But I do like that, just that consistent process and that consistent output of Volkov to probably carry him to a win here. Let's go ahead and look at the bets that I've placed so far for this card. Where are we at here? Okay. I've got 1.6 units on Alexander Volkov at minus 160. That was actually one of those bets that I placed way ahead of time without actually doing the tape study. Sometimes I do those. I don't do it very often, but sometimes I see a spot that I like and I go ahead and place it, especially with how the lines have been moving lately and that sort of thing. Sometimes you can do that and create ARB opportunities for yourself because somebody becomes a bigger favorite. This line actually didn't move that much, and it actually moved the other way. So in this case, I would have been better off waiting. But anyway, 1.6 units on Volkov at minus 160. Like I said, I put that huge 10-unit banger on Damon Jackson at minus 280. I'm feeling good about that one with him up at minus 600 now. I doubled up and did 3.3. Hopefully I did the math there right. It would have been 1.65 units if I wanted to win 1 unit on Jeff Molina at minus 165, but I doubled that to 3.3 to win 2 units on Molina at minus 165. I do feel pretty good about Molina in that spot. I put 2 units on Mozharov Evloev to win by decision at minus 145. I just thought that was a good line. Like I said, it sucks to bet a prop with a minus sign in front of it, but when you're talking about a minus 400 favorite who almost always wins his fight by decision, you're taking that minus 400 down to minus 145 for what is almost certainly his most likely win condition. I think that's a pretty good bet. I did put 0.2 units on Carini Silva to win by submission at plus 550. I put half a unit on Johnny Munoz to win by submission at plus 275. And then I've got 1 unit on a parlay of Mozharov Evloev, Damon Jackson, and Aaron Blanchfield, which came out to minus 102. That's all I've got right now. That might be all I end up with. I'm not sure. It's possible that I'll add to it, but I'm going to have to call it a night. It's a little bit after 7. I got to head to a movie with my wife here. But as always, thanks so much for checking out my videos. I really appreciate it. You're probably seeing this on the Never Hedge Media channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to Never Hedge Media. Also, you can check out my, I put out some of my stuff here. I also put out some stuff on the Erik Betts Fights channel. Please go ahead and head over to Erik Betts Fights and subscribe there. Also, I do a weekly show called Big Money Bets. I usually do it Thursday nights live at 7 p.m. Pacific time. This week, which I'm doing it on Wednesday night, which is June 1st, which is tomorrow for me right now, but it might not be tomorrow for you, depending upon when you're listening to this. But June 1st, Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific time on the Erik Betts Fights YouTube channel. We're doing Big Money Bets. It's a fun show where I bring a guest on and we talk about our favorite props and parlays, like big money payouts. We end up talking about, crazy plus 2,000, plus 3,000 props. It's a pretty fun show. And then you can also catch me every day that there's a UFC event. So every Saturday that a UFC event is happening on the DFS by the Numbers YouTube channel. Myself, Brady from DFS by the Numbers, Narco Cop MMA, and Uncle Weezy MMA. We're a 4-person panel. 1 hour before the first prelim kicks off, we go through the entire card. We each share our favorite bet for that card, and the show ends just as the first fight starts. So it's kind of a great last stop to get your last-minute degen action in for each UFC card. Again, thank you so much for being here, everybody. I am Erik with Erik Betts Fights, reminding you to play it smart, play it tight. Let's grow those bankrolls, everybody. Have a great one and enjoy UFC Vegas 56 this weekend.